The evening sun cast long shadows across the dusty ranch house when Benjamin Quinn pushed open the door and found everything too quiet, too still, like the world had stopped breathing just moments before he arrived. He called out for Emma, his voice echoing through the empty rooms, but only silence answered him back. The kitchen table held a single piece of paper weighted down by the salt shaker, and his heart dropped into his stomach before he even read the first word. Benjamin's hands trembled as he picked up the note, recognizing Emma's careful handwriting immediately. "My dearest Benjamin," it began, and he had to steady himself against the table. "By the time you read this, I will be on the evening stage heading east. Please do not think this decision comes from any lack of love for you, because my heart breaks even as I write these words. But I cannot stay here any longer, watching you work yourself to death on this ranch while I stand by feeling useless and out of place. I am returning to my aunt's home in St. Louis, where I belong, where I will not be a burden to you or anyone else. You deserve someone who can truly be a partner to you in this hard life, not a city girl who cannot even properly tend a garden without burning in the sun. Please forgive me for leaving this way, but I could not bear to see the relief in your eyes when I told you I was going. I will always love you, Emma." The paper crumpled in his fist as rage and desperation flooded through him in equal measure, relief in his eyes. How could she think such a thing? Benjamin looked around the kitchen they had shared for the past 8 months since their wedding, seeing it now through her eyes perhaps for the first time. The crude wooden furniture he had built himself, the lack of curtains on the windows, the water pump that required 20 pulls before it started working properly. He had promised her father he would give her a good life here in Dalhart, Texas, but maybe she was right. Maybe he had failed her. But no, that was not the thought he should be having right now. The evening stage meant she had only left an hour ago, maybe less. Benjamin ran to the window and saw the sun just touching the horizon. The stage would stop in 3 towns before reaching the rail station in Amarillo, and from there she would board a train that would take her away from him forever. He had maybe 12 hours to catch her before she disappeared into the vastness of the east. Benjamin grabbed his heavy coat from the peg by the door and his hat from the table. His horse, a strong chestnut gelding named Copper, was in the barn, and he ran there now with his heart pounding. The ranch hands looked up in surprise as he burst through the doors. "Boss, what is wrong?" asked Miguel, one of his most trusted workers. "Emma left. She is on the evening stage. I have to catch her before she reaches Amarillo." Benjamin threw a saddle over Copper's back and cinched it tight. The horse sensed his urgency and stamped impatiently. "That is a hard ride, Mr. Quinn." 70 miles through the night. Miguel grabbed a second saddle. "I will come with you." "No." Benjamin swung himself up onto Copper. "I need you here to watch the herd. That group of rustlers has been spotted near the northern pasture. I cannot leave the place undefended." "But Benjamin, the route is dangerous at night. There are ravines, wild animals, and those same rustlers could be anywhere along the road. I do not care if the devil himself blocks my path. I am bringing my wife home." Benjamin dug his heels into Copper's flanks, and the horse leaped forward into the gathering darkness. The first hour of riding was the easiest because fury and determination pushed him forward without thought. How dare she decide what he felt without asking him? How dare she assume he would be relieved to lose her? Emma Thompson, now Emma Quinn, had walked into his life 10 months ago and turned everything upside down in the best possible way. Her father, a wealthy merchant from St. Louis, had brought her to Texas on a business trip, hoping to expand his mercantile interests into the growing cattle towns. Benjamin had been in Dalhart buying supplies when he first saw her stepping down from her father's fancy carriage. All golden hair and blue eyes and completely out of place in the dusty street. He had not meant to stare, but she caught him looking and smiled, and that was the end of his bachelor existence. They had courted for 6 weeks under her father's watchful eye, and Benjamin had been terrified the entire time that she would realize he was just a rough cowboy with dirt under his fingernails, and nothing to offer her but hard work and an uncertain future. But Emma had said yes when he proposed, had looked at him with such love and certainty that he believed they could overcome anything. The wedding had been small, held in the little church in Dalhart with half the town attending. Emma had worn a dress her mother made, white lace with tiny pearl buttons, and Benjamin had never seen anything more beautiful in his entire life. They had spoken their vows on a bright February morning in 1885, and he had promised before God and everyone to love and cherish her until death parted them. That had been 8 months ago, and now she was running away. Copper stumbled on a loose rock and Benjamin forced himself to focus on the present. The moon was rising, nearly full, which was a blessing because it meant he could see the road ahead. The stage route ran roughly northeast toward Amarillo, following the flattest ground through the Texas Panhandle. He knew this country well, had driven cattle through it many times, but never at night and never alone. The temperature dropped as the night deepened, and Benjamin pulled his coat tighter. His mind kept going back to the past few weeks, searching for signs he had missed. Emma had been quieter than usual, he realized now. She had stopped asking him about his day or sharing stories about the letters from her mother. When had that started? A month ago. 6 weeks. He had been so focused on preparing for winter, on making sure they had enough hay stored and the fences repaired, that he had not noticed his wife slipping away from him. There had been that day 2 weeks ago when he came in from the range and found her crying in the kitchen. She had said it was nothing, just missing her family, and he had held her for a moment before washing up for supper. Why had he not pressed her further? Why had he accepted such an obvious lie? Because he was scared, Benjamin admitted to himself as Copper cantered through the darkness. He was scared that she regretted marrying him, scared that she wanted the life she left behind, scared that love alone was not enough to keep her happy in this hard country. So he had worked harder, thinking that if he could just make the ranch more successful, if he could just give her a bigger house or finer things, then she would be content. He had been a fool. The first stage stop was in a tiny settlement called Carrick, about 20 miles from Dalhart. Benjamin pushed Copper hard and reached it just as the church bell somewhere was tolling midnight. The station was dark, the stage long gone, but an old man sat on the porch smoking a pipe. "Stage come through here," Benjamin called out, slowing Copper to a walk. "About 2 hours ago." Changed the horses and headed on. The old man squinted at him. "You chasing someone, my wife? She running away or you running away?" "She is running. I am following." The old man nodded slowly. "My wife ran off once back in '62. I let her go, figured she knew her own mind. Regretted it every day since. You got a good horse there, but he is going to need water and a few minutes rest, or you will kill him before you reach Amarillo." Benjamin wanted to argue, wanted to keep riding, but the old man was right. He dismounted and led Copper to the water trough while the old man disappeared inside the station. He returned a moment later with a canteen and a cloth bag. "Fresh water for you and some cornbread. My wife made it this morning." He paused. "My new wife, I mean. Found her 5 years after the first one left. She is good to me, but she is not the one I dream about. I am not giving up on Emma." Benjamin took the offerings and tied them to his saddle. "She is the only woman I will ever love." "Then you better ride fast, son. Next stop is Dalhart Junction, Another 20 miles. Stage will rest there for an hour before the final push to Amarillo. Benjamin mounted up again, his legs already aching from the hard ride. Thank you for the supplies. Bring her home, the old man said, and it sounded like a prayer. The miles stretched on, each one feeling longer than the last. Copper was breathing hard now, his coat dark with sweat despite the cold night air. Benjamin knew he was pushing the horse too hard, but what choice did he have? Every minute that passed took Emma farther away from him. He tried to imagine what she was thinking right now, sitting in that cramped stage with strangers, watching the dark landscape roll past. Was she crying? Was she relieved? Did she truly believe he would be better off without her? The thought made his chest ache worse than any physical pain. They had their first real conversation in her father's mercantile store in Dalhart. Benjamin had been looking at a new bridle, trying to decide if he could afford it, when Emma approached him holding a book. "Excuse me, sir, but you look like someone who knows horses. Would you say this guide to horse care is accurate?" She had opened the book to a random page, her finger pointing to a diagram. Benjamin had glanced at it and then at her, seeing the intelligence and humor in her blue eyes. "Well, miss, that diagram shows the bridle on backwards, so I would say the author does not know much about horses at all." She had laughed, a bright sound that made something warm bloom in his chest. "I thought as much. My father is considering stocking these in the store, but I told him we should only sell quality goods. Thank you for confirming my suspicions. Always happy to help a lady avoid bad horse advice." He had tipped his hat to her, ready to leave before he made a fool of himself. "Do you work on a ranch nearby?" she had asked, and there was genuine interest in her voice, not the polite disinterest he usually heard from town women. "I own a ranch about 5 miles south of here. Small operation, just me and a few hands, but we are growing." He had tried to sound confident, like a man who had his future secure. "That sounds wonderful. I have always wondered what ranch life was like. My father and I are from St. Louis, you see, and the most exciting animals we see there are carriage horses and the occasional dog." They had talked for an hour in that store, with her asking questions about cattle and horses and the land, and him trying not to stare at the way her hair caught the light from the window. Her father had finally interrupted them, looking Benjamin up and down with a merchant's assessing eye, but Emma had smiled at him and said she hoped to see him again. He had come to town every single day after that, always finding an excuse to visit the mercantile. Emma was always there, helping her father with the accounts or arranging merchandise, and she always had time to talk with Benjamin. On the 5th day, he worked up the courage to ask if he could take her to the church social that weekend, and she had said yes so quickly he almost could not believe it. Courting a city woman while being a rough rancher had been terrifying. Benjamin had borrowed a proper suit from the general store owner, had scrubbed under his fingernails until they bled, had practiced what he would say to her father when the time came to ask for her hand. Emma had made it easier by genuinely seeming to enjoy his company, laughing at his stories about stubborn cattle and asking intelligent questions about the business of ranching. When he finally proposed, kneeling in the dirt outside her father's rented house in Dalhart, she had tears in her eyes. "Yes, Benjamin Quinn, I will marry you. I will marry you and live on your ranch and build a life with you." She had pulled him to his feet and kissed him, and he had felt like the luckiest man in Texas. But somewhere between that moment and tonight, something had gone wrong, and Benjamin still could not figure out exactly what it was. Dalhart Junction appeared on the horizon just as the moon reached its peak in the sky. It was slightly larger than Carrick, with a proper station house and a small saloon that stayed open late to serve the stage passengers. Benjamin could see lamplight in the windows as he approached, and his heart began to race. The stage was still here, sitting in front of the station with its team of horses being changed out. He dismounted before Copper had fully stopped and ran to the station door. Inside, a handful of weary travelers sat on wooden benches, and behind the ticket counter stood a bored-looking clerk. Benjamin's eyes scanned every face, looking for golden hair and blue eyes, but Emma was not there. "The stage from Dalhart," he said to the clerk, his voice rough from hours of cold air. "Is it still here? Just about to leave again? You wanting to buy a ticket?" "No, I need to find someone who is on it. A woman, blonde hair, traveling alone. Her name is Emma Quinn." The clerk shook his head. "Cannot give out passenger information. Company policy." Benjamin slapped his hand on the counter, making the clerk jump. "That is my wife, and she left home without understanding how much I need her. I just need to talk to her 5 minutes, that is all. Sir, I cannot, please." The word came out as a desperate plea. "Please, I am begging you." If you have ever loved anyone in your life, you will understand why I have to find her. The clerk's expression softened slightly. He glanced toward the door leading to the back of the station. "There is a woman matching that description who asked to use our washroom. She seemed upset. Been back there about 10 minutes now." Benjamin did not wait for permission. He pushed through the door the clerk indicated and found himself in a narrow hallway with 3 doors. One was clearly a storage closet, one was marked as the clerk's office, and the third had a small painted sign reading "Ladies." He knocked gently. "Emma, Emma, are you in there?" There was a long silence, and then he heard her voice, small and shocked. "Benjamin, please come out. We need to talk. You should not be here, you should be at the ranch." "The ranch does not matter if you are not there with me." He pressed his palm flat against the door, wishing he could see her face. "Emma, please, just talk to me. If you still want to leave after we talk, I will let you go. But I cannot let you run away thinking I would be relieved you are gone." Another silence, longer this time. Then the door opened slowly, and there she was. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair had come loose from its pins, and she was clutching a handkerchief in one hand. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "How did you get here so fast?" she asked. "I rode all night, nearly killed Copper doing it, but I had to catch you." He wanted to pull her into his arms, but forced himself to stay still to give her space. "Emma, why do you think I would be relieved you are leaving?" "Because I am useless to you." Fresh tears welled in her eyes. "I cannot cook properly. I cannot tend a garden without getting sick from the sun. I cannot help with the cattle or the horses or any of the real work. All I do is make extra laundry and use up supplies. You would be better off with someone who knows how to be a rancher's wife. Do you think I married you because I needed a ranch hand?" Benjamin took a cautious step closer. "Emma, I married you because I love you. Because you make me laugh. Because you are kind and smart and brave enough to leave everything you knew to take a chance on a life with me. Because when I come home after a hard day and see you reading by the window, my whole world makes sense. But I see how tired you are, how hard you work. If you had married someone else, someone who could actually help you, your life would be easier. My life would be empty." He reached out and gently took her hand. "Emma, listen to me. I have been a fool these past weeks. I saw you were unhappy, and instead of talking to you about it, I just worked harder, thinking I could somehow fix things by making more money or improving the ranch. But what you needed was for me to be there, to be your husband instead of just a rancher who happens to sleep in the same house." She was crying openly now, and he pulled her into his arms finally, holding her tight against his chest. "I miss my family," she sobbed into his shirt. "I miss my mother and my sisters and the way things were familiar. But I love you, Benjamin. I love you so much it hurts." I just did not know how to tell you I was struggling. Then we figure it out together." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Maybe we can visit your family in St. Louis sometimes. Maybe we can find ways to make the ranch house more like a home you are comfortable in. Maybe we can hire someone to help with the cooking and cleaning so you do not feel so overwhelmed. But we do it together, Emma. You do not run away and I do not hide behind work. We talk to each other like we promised to do." She pulled back enough to look up at him, her tear-stained face so dear to him he felt his own eyes sting. "I am sorry I left that note. I am sorry I was too scared to tell you face to face. I am sorry I made you feel like you had to handle everything alone." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "Come home with me, please. We will figure everything else out, but just come home. All aboard." The stage driver's voice boomed through the station. "Dalhart Junction to Amarillo, all passengers aboard." Emma looked toward the front of the station, then back at Benjamin. He held his breath, terrified she would still choose to leave. But then she smiled, watery and tentative, and nodded. "Take me home, Benjamin." The relief that flooded through him was so intense he actually felt dizzy. He kissed her then, properly, pouring 8 months of love and 1 night of terror into it. She kissed him back just as fiercely, her arms wrapping around his neck. "I need to get my bag from the stage," she said when they finally broke apart. "I will get it. You wait here." Benjamin retrieved her small traveling case from the stage driver, who looked amused by the whole situation. The clerk at the counter gave him a knowing smile as they walked back through the station hand in hand. Outside, Copper was drinking from the water trough, looking exhausted. "We cannot ride him back tonight," Emma said, running a gentle hand down the horse's sweaty neck. "He is worn out, poor thing. You are right. We will have to stay here tonight and ride back in the morning." Benjamin looked around the small settlement. The saloon likely had a room to rent, though the thought of taking his wife to such a place made him uncomfortable. Emma seemed to read his thoughts. "The station clerk mentioned there is a widow woman on the edge of town who sometimes takes in travelers. We could ask there." The widow woman turned out to be a sharp-eyed grandmother named Mrs. Foster who took one look at them and seemed to understand the entire situation immediately. "Lovers quarrel?" she asked, opening her door wider. "Something like that," Benjamin admitted. "Well, you both look like you have been through the ringer. I have a spare room you can use and I will make you some breakfast in the morning. That will be $2. It was more than Benjamin wanted to spend, but he was too tired and too grateful to argue. Mrs. Foster showed them to a small but clean room with a real bed, not just a rope frame and quilts that smelled like lavender. She brought them a basin of water and some soap, then left them alone with a meaningful look. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking shy. They had been married for 8 months, but somehow this felt like their wedding night all over again. Benjamin sat beside her and took her hand. "Tell me everything," he said. "Everything you have been feeling, everything I missed. I want to know." So she told him. She talked about how overwhelmed she felt trying to manage a household with skills she had never learned growing up in the city. How she burned the first 5 meals she tried to cook, and finally just started making simple things like bread and stew because those were harder to ruin. How the sun in Texas was so much stronger than in St. Louis, and she kept getting terrible burns on her arms and face when she tried to work in the garden. How the other ranchers' wives in the area were polite but distant, clearly seeing her as an outsider who did not belong. "And the worst part," she said, her voice breaking, "was feeling like I was disappointing you every single day. You never complained, you were always kind, but I could see it in your eyes sometimes. This look, like you were wondering what you had gotten yourself into by marrying me." "That was never disappointment," Benjamin said firmly. Emma, if I looked troubled, it was because I was trying to figure out how to make you happy and failing miserably at it. I was raised by a father who believed men should work and women should manage the home, and I never learned how to just talk about feelings or problems. So I did what I knew how to do, which was work harder, and I ignored what I did not know how to do, which was be a proper husband to you. You are a wonderful husband. I am a husband who almost lost his wife because I was too proud and too scared to admit I did not know what I was doing. He turned to face her fully. Here is the truth, Emma. I have no idea how to be married. My parents were not exactly a model of happiness. My father worked himself to death, and my mother became bitter and angry. I promised myself I would do better, but I do not know how. So I need you to teach me. Tell me when you are struggling. Tell me when you need help or when you need me to just sit with you and talk. Tell me when I am being an idiot and working too much. Can you do that, if you promise to listen when I tell you? I promise. He sealed it with a kiss, gentle this time, full of tenderness and new understanding. They talked for hours that night, curled up together on the bed with the quilts pulled over them. Emma told him about her childhood in St. Louis, about her mother who was a talented seamstress and her father who had built his mercantile business from nothing. She told him about her two younger sisters who still lived at home and how much she missed their daily chatter. She told him about the books she loved to read and how she had always dreamed of having an adventure, never quite realizing that adventures often involved more hardship than excitement. Benjamin told her about growing up on the ranch, about losing his mother to fever when he was 15 and his father to a heart attack 3 years ago. He told her about the struggle to keep the ranch going on his own, about the lean years and the good years, and the constant worry that one bad season could wipe out everything he had built. He told her about the loneliness of eating supper alone every night and waking up to an empty house, and how meeting her had felt like the sun coming out after a long winter. I want to learn to cook properly, Emma said as the first light of dawn started creeping through the window. Real meals, not just bread and stew. And I want to hire someone to help me, at least at first, so I am not trying to figure everything out alone. We can do that. There is a Mexican woman in Dalhart, Senora Martinez, who is known for her cooking. Maybe she would be willing to teach you, or maybe she has a daughter who would want to work for us. And I want to visit my family, Benjamin, at least once a year, maybe at Christmas time. That seems fair. The ranch is slower in winter anyway. He traced his fingers along her arm. And I want you to tell me if the other ranchers' wives are being unkind to you. We will figure out how to help you make friends, or we will just keep to ourselves. Whatever you need. I need you, she said simply. I need you to come home at a reasonable hour sometimes instead of working until you can barely stand. I need you to sit with me in the evenings and tell me about your day. I need you to let me be part of your life, not just someone who waits for you to come home. I can do that. I want to do that. He yawned hugely, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Sleep, Emma said, snuggling closer to him. We will ride home when we wake up. They slept until mid-morning, wrapped in each other's arms, and woke to the smell of Mrs. Foster cooking bacon and eggs. Over breakfast, the old woman gave them a knowing smile. You two sorted out your troubles, I take it. We are working on it, Benjamin said, holding Emma's hand on top of the table. Good. Marriage is hard work, harder than most anything else in life. But it is worth it when you find the right person. She refilled their coffee cups. My husband died 10 years ago, and I still miss him every single day. We had our fights, Lord knows we did, but we always talked it through. That is the secret, you know. Just keep talking to each other. They thanked her for the wisdom and the hospitality, then set out for home with Emma riding behind Benjamin on Copper. The horse was rested and fed. though he still gave Benjamin a reproachful look that clearly said he did not appreciate being nearly ridden to death. The journey home took most of the day since they had to go slowly with both of them on one horse, but neither of them minded. They talked the whole way, making plans and sharing dreams. "I want children someday," Emma said, her arms wrapped around Benjamin's waist. "At least 3 or 4. "That sounds good to me, though maybe we should work on keeping you happy here first before we add babies to the mix. I think I will be happy now that I know I can tell you when things are hard." When they finally reached the ranch as the sun was setting, Miguel and the other hands came running out of the barn, clearly relieved to see them both. "Boss, you found her," Miguel grinned widely. "We were worried when you did not come back. I found her." Benjamin helped Emma down from the horse, then dismounted himself. Or rather, she let me find her. The ranch house looked different to Benjamin now as they walked inside. He could see it through Emma's eyes, all the rough edges and unfinished corners, the things he had never noticed because he grew up in places like this. But he could also see the potential, the ways they could make it into a real home together. Over the next few weeks, they began making changes. Benjamin hired Senora Martinez's daughter, a cheerful woman named Rosa who was happy to teach Emma to cook in exchange for good wages and a room in the small cottage behind the main house. Rosa was patient and funny, and she made Emma feel comfortable asking questions without feeling foolish. Benjamin made a conscious effort to come home by supper time every evening unless there was a genuine emergency. He would wash up and then sit in the kitchen with Emma and Rosa, talking about the day while they finished preparing the meal. After supper, he and Emma would sit together in the main room, her reading while he worked on ranch accounts, just enjoying each other's presence. They wrote to Emma's family, and her mother wrote back with long letters full of news and love. Emma would read them aloud to Benjamin, and he started to feel like he knew her family even though he had never met them. They made plans to visit St. Louis the following winter, after the cattle were sold and the ranch was settled for the season. The other ranchers' wives slowly warmed up to Emma once Rosa started coming to town with her and introducing her to the Mexican community. Emma discovered she had a talent for sewing, something she had learned from her mother, and she began trading her skills for cooking lessons and friendship. Soon, she had a small circle of women who would visit the ranch for afternoon tea, and Benjamin would come home to find the house full of laughter and Spanish and English mixing together. Spring came to the Texas Panhandle with wildflowers blooming across the prairie and new calves being born in the pastures. Benjamin taught Emma to ride her own horse, a gentle mare named Daisy, and they would sometimes ride out together in the evenings to watch the sunset over their land. Those were Benjamin's favorite times, sitting on horseback with his wife beside him, knowing they had worked through their troubles and come out stronger. In early summer, Emma started feeling ill in the mornings. At first she thought it was something she ate, but Rosa took one look at her and started laughing. "Senora Emma, I think you are going to have a baby," Rosa said with a knowing smile. Emma's eyes went wide and she sat down heavily in a kitchen chair. "A baby? Are you sure?" "My mother had 8 children and I have seen this before. You should see the doctor in town to be certain, but I would bet money on it." That evening, Emma told Benjamin her suspicions. He was so shocked he nearly dropped the plate he was carrying to the table. Then a slow smile spread across his face, and he let out a whoop of joy that probably scared the cattle in the far pasture. "A baby," he kept saying, like he could not quite believe it. "We are going to have a baby." The doctor confirmed it a few days later. Emma was about 2 months along, which meant the baby would come in late winter or early spring. They wrote to her family immediately, and her mother's response was so excited and full of advice that it took Emma an entire evening to read it all. Benjamin became even more protective than before, insisting Emma rest more and do less heavy work. Emma tolerated this for about a week before she sat him down and reminded him that pregnant women had been working on ranches for centuries, and she was not made of glass. They compromised, with Emma doing lighter chores and Rosa taking on more of the heavy kitchen work. As Emma's belly grew, Benjamin found himself talking to it at night, telling their unborn child about the ranch and the horses and the life they would have together. Emma would laugh and run her fingers through his hair, happy in a way she had never been before. "I am glad I did not get on that train to St. Louis," she said one night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest. "I am glad I rode all night to stop you," Benjamin replied. "Best decision I ever made." The baby came on a cold February morning in 1886, almost exactly a year after their wedding. The labor was long and difficult, with Senora Martinez and Rosa both there to help while Benjamin paced outside the bedroom door, terrified and useless. But when he finally heard the baby's first cry, strong and healthy, he felt tears running down his face. Rosa opened the door with a huge smile. "You have a son, Senor Benjamin, a big, healthy boy." Benjamin rushed into the room to find Emma exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in blankets. The baby had a red, scrunched-up face and a surprising amount of dark hair. "Meet your son," Emma said softly, her eyes shining. "I thought we could name him William after your father." Benjamin had not expected that, had not even suggested it because his relationship with his father had been complicated at best. But looking at his son, at this tiny new person who represented hope and future, and all the good things he wanted to build, it felt right. "William Quinn," he said, testing out the name. "That is perfect." Being parents was harder than either of them expected. William was a fussy baby who did not sleep well and cried often. Emma was overwhelmed and exhausted, and Benjamin felt helpless, not knowing how to soothe a colicky infant. But they muddled through together, taking turns walking the floor with William at night, supporting each other when the frustration got too high. Rosa was a godsend, teaching them tricks her mother had used to calm fussy babies and giving them breaks so they could sleep. Miguel and the other ranch hands were surprisingly good with the baby too, taking turns holding him so Emma could have a few minutes to herself. "It takes a village to raise a child," Senora Martinez said when she visited with yet another pot of her special soup. "You are not supposed to do this alone." By the time William was 6 months old, they had found their rhythm as a family. The baby was sleeping better. Emma had recovered her strength, and Benjamin had learned to balance ranch work with family time. They still had hard days, still had moments of frustration and exhaustion, but they faced them together. Emma's family finally made the trip to visit when William was 9 months old. Her parents and 2 sisters came on the train to Amarillo, and Benjamin and Emma met them there with a wagon. Emma's mother cried when she saw them, holding Emma tight and then demanding to hold her grandson immediately. "He looks just like you, Benjamin," Emma's father said, shaking his hand firmly. "Strong and healthy. You have done well by my daughter." Having Emma's family at the ranch for 2 weeks was chaotic but wonderful. Her sisters, both in their late teens, were enchanted by the cowboys and the horses and everything about ranch life. Her mother worked alongside Rosa in the kitchen, the 2 women bonding over recipes and babies. Her father spent long hours talking with Benjamin about the cattle business and the future of ranching in Texas. When they finally left, Emma cried for a full day, missing them already. But she was also content, knowing that her 2 worlds had finally merged in a good way. The years passed quickly after that. William grew into a sturdy toddler with his father's dark hair and his mother's blue eyes. When he was 2 years old, Emma became pregnant again, and this time the baby came easier. They had a daughter they named Charlotte, after Emma's mother, and Benjamin fell completely in love all over again. The ranch prospered as cattle prices rose and Benjamin made smart decisions about breeding and sales. They were able to build a larger house, one with proper glass windows and a real wood floor. Emma designed it with Rosa's help, making sure there was a big kitchen where they could all work together and a comfortable sitting room for evenings with the family. They made the trip to St. Louis every winter, spending Christmas with Emma's family and letting the children get to know their grandparents and aunts. Emma's sisters both married eventually, and their families would sometimes visit the ranch in the summer, creating wonderful chaos and memories. When William was 5 and Charlotte was 3, Emma had another baby, a boy they named Thomas. He was an easy baby, happy and content, and he fit into their family like he had always been there. Benjamin would sometimes look around the supper table, seeing Emma and Rosa and their 3 children all together, and feel overwhelmed with gratitude for everything they had built. Miguel became the ranch foreman, trusted completely to manage the day-to-day operations so Benjamin could spend more time with his growing family. The ranch hands were loyal and hardworking, many of them staying for years because Benjamin and Emma treated them fairly and made them feel like part of something bigger than just a job. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Benjamin took Emma back to Dalhart Junction, to the widow woman's house where they had spent that crucial night after he rode all night to bring her home. Mrs. Foster was still alive, though much older and more frail. She remembered them immediately and laughed with delight when she saw them. "I knew you two would make it," she said, patting Emma's hand. "You had that look about you, like you were willing to fight for each other. That is what matters in a marriage." They had supper with her and told her about their life, about the children and the ranch, and everything they had accomplished. When they left, Benjamin gave her a generous sum of money, wanting to repay her kindness in some small way. As they rode home in the wagon, Emma leaned against Benjamin's shoulder and sighed contentedly. "You ever think about that night?" she asked. "When I left that note, sometimes, it was the worst and best night of my life. Worst because I thought I was losing you, best because it forced us to actually talk about what we needed from each other. I was so scared that night, scared you would not come after me, scared you would, scared of everything." She looked up at him. "I am glad you rode all night to bring me home. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I would ride through hell itself if that was what it took to keep you." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the familiar prairie. Their children were at home with Rosa and Miguel, probably causing some kind of mischief, and they would get back to them soon. But for this moment, it was just the two of them, remembering where they had been and appreciating where they were now. Life continued to be good for the Quinn family. William grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch and seemed destined to take it over someday. Charlotte was smart and fierce, declaring at age 8 that she was going to be a veterinarian and take care of all the animals in Texas. Thomas was the peacemaker, gentle and kind, always trying to make sure everyone was happy. When Emma was 40 years old, she surprised everyone, including herself, by becoming pregnant again. The doctor warned them that it could be dangerous at her age, but Emma was determined to see it through. This time it was twin girls, Alice and Margaret, who arrived healthy and screaming in the summer of 1896. "Our family is complete now," Emma said, holding both babies while Benjamin looked on in amazement. "6 children," he said, shaking his head. "My father would never believe it." "Your father would be proud of you," Emma corrected. "You built something good here, Benjamin. Not just the ranch, but this family, this life. You should be proud of yourself." And he was. Looking back on everything they had been through, all the struggles and triumphs, Benjamin knew he was the luckiest man alive. He had a wife he adored, children who filled his days with joy and chaos, and a ranch that was thriving beyond his wildest dreams. But more than that, he had learned how to be vulnerable, how to talk about his feelings, how to ask for help when he needed it. Emma had taught him that love was not just about grand gestures like riding all night to bring someone home. It was also about the small moments, the daily choice to be present and engaged, to listen and support and grow together. Rosa stayed with them for over 20 years, becoming as much a part of the family as anyone. When she finally decided to retire and move back to live with her mother in town, Emma cried as hard as she had when her own family left after their first visit. They threw a huge party for Rosa, inviting everyone from miles around, and gave her enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. Miguel married eventually, to a sweet woman from Mexico who came to work as the new household helper. They had children of their own who grew up playing with the younger Quinn children, and the two families became inseparable. Emma's parents both passed away in their 70s, peacefully and surrounded by family. Emma grieved, but was grateful they had lived long enough to know all their grandchildren and see how happy she was. Her sisters and their families remained close, with regular visits and long letters keeping everyone connected. As Benjamin and Emma grew older, they slowly handed over more of the ranch operations to William, who had married a rancher's daughter and had children of his own. Charlotte did indeed become a veterinarian, one of the first women in Texas to do so, and split her time between the ranch and a practice in Amarillo. Thomas became a teacher, dedicating his life to educating the children of ranch families who often had limited access to schools. The twin girls, Alice and Margaret, were inseparable and eventually opened a dress shop in Dalhart, becoming famous throughout the region for their beautiful designs. They remained unmarried, claiming they were too busy and too happy with their lives to bother with husbands, much to Emma's amused exasperation. On a warm spring evening in 1910, Benjamin and Emma sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set over the land they had built a life on. They were both in their 60s now, gray-haired and weathered by time and sun, but still deeply in love. "You remember the night you left me that note?" Benjamin asked, taking Emma's hand in his. "How could I forget? It was the stupidest thing I ever did." "It was the thing that saved us," Benjamin corrected. "If you had not left, I never would have realized I was losing you. I would have just kept working and working until we had nothing left. And if you had not ridden all night to bring me home, I would have spent the rest of my life regretting it." Emma squeezed his hand. "We have had a good life, Benjamin Quinn, a very good life." "The best," he agreed, "though I have to admit there were moments when I was not sure we would make it. 6 children, droughts, hard winters, cattle rustlers, all of it. But we did make it. We made it because we promised to face everything together." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am so glad that scared Cowboy asked a city girl to dance at that church social all those years ago. I am glad that city girl said yes." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their grandchildren play in the yard while William and his wife supervised from the barn. Charlotte's buggy was pulling up the drive, probably coming for supper like she did most evenings when she was not in Amarillo. Thomas and his family would arrive soon too. He had sent word earlier. This was what they had built together. Not just a ranch or a house or a family, but a legacy of love and hard work and the determination to keep choosing each other every single day. The note Emma had left all those years ago was still tucked away in Benjamin's dresser drawer, folded carefully and preserved. He looked at it sometimes, remembering the terror and desperation of that night, but also remembering what came after. They had learned to talk to each other, to share their fears and hopes and struggles. They had learned that marriage was not about being perfect. It was about being committed to working through the imperfections together. They had learned that love was both the grand gesture of riding through the night and the quiet moment of holding hands on the porch at sunset. As the years went on, and they grew even older, Benjamin and Emma remained devoted to each other. When Benjamin developed a bad cough that would not go away, Emma nursed him through it with the same fierce determination she brought to everything. When Emma's joints ached from arthritis, Benjamin would massage them every evening, his rough hands surprisingly gentle. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The whole town of Dalhart turned out for the party, honoring the couple who had become pillars of the community. People gave speeches about Benjamin's fairness as a rancher and Emma's kindness as a neighbor. But the best moment was when Benjamin pulled Emma onto the dance floor for one more waltz, moving slowly but surely to the music while everyone watched with tears in their eyes. "I would do it all again," Benjamin whispered in her ear as they danced. "Every single moment, good and bad. Even the night I tried to leave you, especially that night. It taught me what really matters." They lived to see the start of the new century and beyond, watching the world change around them while their love remained constant. The ranch continued to thrive under William's management, and all their children made them proud in different ways. They had built something that would last far beyond their own lives, a family and a legacy rooted in the hard soil of the Texas Panhandle. When Benjamin finally passed away at the age of 78, Emma held his hand and whispered that she would see him soon. He smiled at her, his blue eyes still full of love after more than 50 years together, and his last words were, "Thank you for letting me bring you home." Emma lived another 2 years without him, surrounded by family but missing her partner terribly. She spent those years writing down the story of their life together, wanting their grandchildren and great-grandchildren to understand where they came from and what their family was built on. She wrote about the night she left the note, about Benjamin riding through the darkness to find her, about all the years that came after. On a quiet morning in early spring, Emma passed away peacefully in her sleep, a smile on her face. The family buried her next to Benjamin on a hill overlooking the ranch, and on her gravestone they put the words she had requested. "He rode all night to bring me home, and I never regretted staying." The ranch continued for generations after them, always in the Quinn family, always a reminder of what two people could build when they committed to loving each other through everything. The story of Benjamin riding through the night became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as an example of true love and determination. And somewhere, in whatever comes after this life, Benjamin and Emma were together again, still holding hands, still choosing each other, still grateful for that night when everything could have ended but instead became the beginning of something beautiful and lasting. Their love story became part of the fabric of Dalhart, Texas, a reminder that sometimes the best things in life are worth fighting for, worth riding through the night for, worth everything it takes to bring someone home where they belong.